The biggest advice I would give to any graduate that wants to go into food science and do something specifically in the food industry is absorb everything you can in whatever role that you take. In product development, which is really nice, you get to see so many different aspects of the business. You're not just in a little bubble in a company, even if it's a large corporation. Because you are launching a product, you have to deal with sales, marketing, you have to deal with production. Sometimes you're just sitting in meetings that you might not even speak in, but just absorb everything that people are saying. You learn so much just from learning from other people and being around other people with different backgrounds and expertise. Sometimes just being around other people and absorbing their knowledge and experience gets you really far. And I've done that my entire career, and I've learned a tremendous amount from other people.
Welcome to episode 17 of the FoodGrads Podcast, the podcast where we explore careers in the food, beverage, and hospitality industries. I'm your host, Veronica Hislop, a molecular science graduate student and career partner with FoodGrads. On this week's podcast, I interviewed Karen Cardona, founder and owner of True Leaves Consulting. True Leaves Consulting is a consultancy agency with the goal of helping to bring food and beverage products to the masses. Whether it's finding reliable suppliers, crafting the perfect recipe, or developing compliant product labels, True Leaves Consulting is there to help. In this episode, Karen and I talked about her career journey, starting with her co-op program at Fanshaw College, all the way to starting her own consulting business. In between, Karen shares her experiences working at Kraft Heinz, Nestle, and the vegan cheese company, Nuts for Cheese. In this episode, we also discuss what a consultant does, the Food Venture program, Karen's passion for empowering women and women of visible minorities. Overall, Karen was inspiring to chat with, and it's so exciting to learn that she has started her own consultancy business, which marries up all the talents that she's built up over the years. With Karen's journey, you really can see how important it is to put yourself out there, and it's only by doing that new doors can start to open for you. I hope you enjoyed this show, so let's get into it. Thank you so much, Karen, for coming on the show. I'm excited that you reached out to me. This is going to be really cool because I know that it's fairly new, your consultancy, True Leaves Consulting. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me. It's super exciting to get myself out there and kind of talk about what it is that I do now that I've started my own business for consulting.
Now, I want to dive right into it, and I want to get to know you and how your path has led to where you are. And I'd love to start with your journey into the food industry. And from what you've told me, you started in the food industry as a co-op student while attending a chemical laboratory technician program at Fanshaw, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
Would you be able to talk about your journey from getting from there to essentially starting your own business? That's pretty big.
First and foremost, what I would say is a lot of people don't know what product developers do, is what I realized even after 11 years of being in the food industry. They don't know that this kind of thing exists, research and development, creating products, and my whole journey started there. So when I first applied as a student in my co-op program to the position that was available at Nestle, I had no idea what it was. And it just was a quick little blurb I saw on the website for Fanshaw that they were hiring in their product development group, and they just needed someone as a co-op student to help the other product developers with all of their projects. So I remember being in my semester, being one of the last people to get a job that semester. And it was one of the last postings that came up. I just got super lucky and did the interview and I got the job. And it really was my first foot into the industry. I had no idea that this kind of job even existed. When I took my chemical lab program, I wanted to work in a medical lab. That was my whole goal for taking that program. I just wanted to test blood and be in a quiet little laboratory. I'm an introvert, so I thought, okay, that's a perfect job for me. I could just go in a corner and test things and no one will bug me and I can make money that way. But that's not what happened. I ended up going into the food industry and I was 18 years old. I was so young. I had no idea what was going on. I walked in my first day and they had this pilot plant there where they were making ice cream from scratch and getting the egg yolks and the cream and mixing things and pasteurizing it and then adding the flavors, and all the stuff they were working on was brand new. It was stuff that wasn't on the market yet. And so my whole job was just to help those product developers make the product in the pilot plant. but they also let me join all the meetings. So I was getting to see like the business aspect of it, working with the sales and marketing team, working with the ingredient suppliers, and also working with the production team, seeing how those things were rolled out when it actually got to that stage of commercialization. So after I was done my co-op there, I thought, this is exactly what I want to do in my career. This is so much fun. I love food. Like I'm a home cook. I'm passionate about that. So it was like weaving both things that I do, cooking and the science portion of what I was taking in school. That was my first step into it. And then ever since then, I just kept with it. So I worked with Nestle for 4 years after that, doing product development. They hired me on after I graduated from my program, which was awesome. And then I even got to go to France, part of Nestle. They have a global research center in France that I just had like this crazy opportunity to go for 1 year and work as a developer over there. So I took it and I went and I got to live over there and do kind of the same thing I was doing in Canada, but more in a global aspect for Nestle for ice cream formulas. And that was a whole experience in itself. And I learned so much over there about how to make products, how to make them taste good. I was really into the sensory evaluation component while I was there. We had the whole red light setup where you would taste the products and do triangle tests. And we tested just all these different products that were never on the market. Some of them never saw the light of day. I remember having like a carbonated ice cream pellet that never went to market because it was too dangerous.
Oh my gosh.
They had it in a packaging where it just had so much pressurized carbon dioxide that if you open the lid, it could pop in a consumer's face. But we tasted these products and, they never went to market, but they were so cool. That was part of my journey, was doing ice cream products. And then from there, I became the research and development manager at a chocolate producing factory in Montreal. And I basically helped the owner, who was starting from scratch again, to do co-manufacturing for other chocolate factories that maybe didn't have the capability to do what we were doing. So I built his R&D program and QA program from scratch there. And that was a huge learning curve for me. I had to do a lot of it in French, and I had just learned French like a year before.
Oh my gosh.
So that was an experience. And what it taught me was to not be scared to try something, like just get out there and do it. And I learned a tremendous amount, but he was already like a successful business owner. This was his second go at it. He was so successful. He became my mentor. Like, he taught me so much about the food business and how to do things from the ground up. And I think that was the basis for me to really continue in my career and feel confident that I could do whatever anyone threw at me. So from there, I went to go work at Heinz as a product developer. And I worked a lot with salad dressings and sauces. I got to work through Heinz because they do a lot of food service with the big guys. So we made a lot of the sauces for McDonald's, Subway, Dairy Queen, and all these other guys. So that's what I ended up doing for about a year and a half, was making prototypes and working directly with the chef at Heinz to create concepts for all of these people. And yeah, those were the three customers that I worked with mostly, was Subway, McDonald's, and Starbucks. And it was really neat. You had to eat everything that you create. So I was eating quite a bit. And that's been all my jobs in product development. You have to taste everything you do. So the amount of ice cream and chocolate and sauces that I've eaten in my career is obscene. Like, it's ridiculous. I shouldn't weigh what I weigh. I should probably be 300 pounds. But, it's also the fun part for me because, like I said, I'm a home cook. So tasting things and changing it as you go along, it's my passion, and I love creating things. And then from there, I went to work with Nuts for Cheese, which is this brand that emerged out of nowhere. I should mention, I had a bit of a break there. I had my girls. So I got pregnant and I had two little girls. I had twins. So I took a break from the food industry for about 2 years, and I dedicated my time to just be at home with them. And I quit my job at Heinz. But when I was ready to go back into the food industry, I jumped into this role at Nuts for Cheese. And it was this really small company. There was maybe 5 people. And the owner was looking for someone to run her plant, which wasn't really like a production plant at the time. It was just this tiny little kitchen she was operating out of. And she was selling at the farmer's market this like really innovative vegan cheese. And she just didn't have the tools to know how to get it into the market in the right way. So when I first joined her, we had a conversation and I said, hey, look, I can help you. I have this background in food science. I think I know what you need. I can make your recipes better and make them food safe and make them last longer. And I can also help you with your packaging, your nutritional facts table, your ingredient deck. And she's like, was so excited, and she brought me on as a consultant. So I worked with her for several months as a consultant, and then she hired me on full time. And then I became her director of operations eventually. So I worked with her for 4 years, and we grew that business like a lot. In that 4 years, we were up to more than 20 employees by the time I left, and we were making more than triple the amount that we started off with. And it was quite the journey because it's such a new space with plant-based foods. But after working there and learning basically how to run operations, I just knew it was time to kind of do things on my own and pursue my own interests. And as hard as it was to leave that position, I'm really excited for this new part of my journey and doing things for my own benefit, as well as helping other people, which is what I love doing. So my consulting allows me to do that. It allows me to still be creative, but also help people. And it's just the perfect blend for me of what I love to do.
Well, there's so many things to unfold with your story about, you've said putting yourself out there, and I can tell in multiple places in your story that that's something that you've done, and to leave a job that you really enjoy to start your own consultancy, that must have not been easy.
It's not. I kind of eased my way into it. I started consulting before I even left that job. And as I was doing that, I realized that this is actually what I enjoy doing. And that's what I started off with the owner of Nuts for Cheese as well. I started off as a consultant. So I know that's my strength, and I know that's where I like to be. And being a consultant for other people lets me work on a bunch of different products at the same time while not having to worry about the day-to-day operations, which was the main part of my job at Nuts for Cheese. So it's just going back to my roots of what I'm passionate about doing. So that's really why I decided to do it.
So for those who might not be aware, because we think of a lot of these big brands and we think about them having like these in-house, like you've done, product development, but with a consultancy, for those who might not know, could you give a little bit more detail about what a consultant would do in the food industry, if there's different kinds, and what are some of the skills that you use for it?
So that's exactly it. Like, these bigger companies have a team of product developers that help make their products. And as a small entrepreneur, you clearly don't have access to that. And it is a job in itself, and it's a really big one. And if you don't have the means to do it, and you don't have the time to do all the things, which it's basically project management, taking that concept from something you make in the kitchen or the lab, but making it that you can actually scale it up and make it in a large factory, that's a huge job. And it takes a lot of people, not just the product developer. It requires working with quality assurance, production, people running the equipment, marketing and sales. It's just a whole team effort. And so for small entrepreneurs that want to get their product out there, like they have a good idea, they don't know how to do it. That's really what I do, is help bring their idea into fruition by giving them the tools they need to get there, and helping along the way, especially with the recipe development and ensuring they get the right suppliers for their ingredients. They're doing things in a very food safe manner, and that they're able to get the proper packaging to ensure that their shelf life is going to be okay when they sell it in stores. That's really where I can help them. And it's, again, my passion, and I love doing it, and I love meeting new people. So it gives me that opportunity to do all of those things.
That sounds so much fun, being able to get to know so many different people as well. Like, I think that is a fun thing in itself. But one of the things that I was curious about in terms of like helping companies, because they're smaller businesses, I can't imagine them having large facilities or something. Would you go and maybe go to their facility and help them create the product, or how does that side work?
It depends on how big the business is. If it's a really small business and they're working out of a commercial kitchen, I can either go to the commercial kitchen, or I can have my own space where I do the prototypes myself. I have a lot of equipment I've acquired over the years myself to do like temperature reads and pH and viscosity testing. So I'm able to recreate their products. But if it's like a bigger business that already has their own plant and their own setup, I would just go over there and help them that way. And a lot of the stuff I can do remotely, like the recipe changes, I can make my own prototypes in-house. But if they have their own equipment, I would definitely be there to help scale it up and make sure that the recipe works on their equipment.
Oh, okay, that makes much more sense.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to circle back to that, but the question that's been popping in my mind is, why did you decide to name your consulting business True Leaves Consulting?
Well, it's interesting. I didn't know whether to use my name or what to do. I didn't want it to all be about me. I eventually want to have a group of people working with me that will be able to work under the banner. But I wanted something that was representative of what I do. And True Leaves is the perfect meaning for what I do. So when a plant is first growing and it's a seedling, all plants look very similar. The leaves look very similar depending on, it doesn't matter actually at that point what type of vegetable or fruit is growing. They all look very similar, but the first set of leaves that look like the actual plant that will grow, for example, if you have a tomato plant and that first set of leaves that looks like a tomato plant, those are called the true leaves. And what it is an expression for me to say I can help all these small entrepreneurs that are maybe just seedlings that don't know where to go, how to find their true leaves and become the plant that they want to be. So that was the inspiration behind the name.
Oh my, there's so much thought put into that. That's such a nice sentiment. I really like that.
Thank you. I had help with it. I had a partner that was just like amazing, and he's a chef and he also grows plants, and he says like, well, obviously it's got to be true leaves, and he was right. It's a perfect explanation of what I do.
It is. And one of the other things that I've just noticed, being someone who does research in like emulsions for my master's thesis. So like when I look at the background that you've done, it seems like there's a lot in that space because ice cream, sauces, and cheeses, they all kind of fall into that category. But with the consulting that you're doing now, do you branch out into maybe other types of products like ready-to-made pies, or I'm just throwing that out there, but things that aren't in that emulsion sphere?
For sure. I'm not afraid to take on any new product. I'll always learn about it and immerse myself and research it before I do it. I think one of the huge advantages that I have, having been in the industry for so long, is I know so many people. So when I'm unsure about something, I have a lot of connections and experts in those particular fields. So I have no problem jumping into any new product space. I pretty much have done that my entire career, jumping from ice cream, chocolate, to salad dressings, to vegan cheese. It's more knowing the project management portion of my job, like how to roll it out. Like I find that learning about the product is actually the easiest part. It's rolling out everything I've learned along the way and making sure that it's viable and you can commercialize it. That's the difficult part. And I think a lot of small entrepreneurs have a problem with that part of it as well. They don't know how to make their product food safe or get their shelf life where it needs to be. And as long as you have that understanding of preservatives and cooking abilities, and you have a good background in food science and food safety, then you can apply all of those techniques into rolling out a product and commercializing it.
Okay, that makes sense. It's really cool how you mentioned that you have so many people to help you out, and you can go to them for advice, and you've built that up over time. I'm just curious, if you were to, let's just say you need someone to help you with, I don't know, let's go with preservative because that's just one of the terms that you used. Would you just call someone up that you know in the past, or I don't know, how would that work?
I think I just know so many people. And what I mean by that is like suppliers. Like if I'm working on a product that requires a preservative, I've already worked with so many suppliers that have sold me those products that I would just go to the sales rep. If it's something completely new that I don't know, I would start researching and testing it myself. Or if I know somebody that's already working in that space, I would just reach out with an email and say, hey, what do you know about this? And a lot of times people are just willing to give me that information because they know that. And I'm their friend and we go way back, or we've worked together in the past or whatever. A lot of people who are product developers, they go into a particular space and they become experts and they don't really leave that field. I don't think a lot of people jump around like I do. So it's interesting. It's a lot of the product developers I've worked with, they just become experts in what they're doing. They have no problem guiding me with whatever I ask. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, it sounds like it, man. One of the other things that I found really interesting is it seems that in the same space, you're also working for the Food Venture program and you're working as an instructor. So I've heard this name float around a bit and I wanted to know a little bit more about it and what would you do there?
So Food Venture program, I believe it started last year, and it's a group of people actually, but the two co-founders who are absolutely amazing, and it's a woman-led venture, is Seema and Karen, and they're both just these amazing women who are so connected in the food industry. One is a dietitian, the other one is a serial entrepreneur, and they just found that there was this need for small entrepreneurs to have access to information and expertise and the know-how of how to launch a product. And so they decided to create this program that touches on all of the different aspects of how to do that. And they have this cohort of people, so chefs, product developers, dietitians, business people, food safety people, that have come together to make these courses and present them in these different cohorts of people that are interested to take it and learn about it. The whole basis of the program is just to help entrepreneurs kind of find their way in a business that can be really confusing sometimes and overwhelming if you have no idea what you're doing. So my job there as an instructor is to teach the portion about product development and recipe development. And it's usually 1.5 hours to 2 hours courses, or they can go up to 3 hours in the different modules. And you can sign up for like boot camps that they offer that are maybe just 5 sessions. And then there are ones that are much larger for like a 12-week program, and whatever fits where you're at in your business. But at least it gives people the opportunity and the hope that they can do it. And it gives them the tools and the connections. And yeah, just that expertise from all these people that are already working in the food industry to help them launch their products.
It's so exciting that there's a program out there, because with the food space, it's not like, you know, you're building a product in terms of like a chair where there's not like, okay, I'm assuming that there's going to be all these other safety compliance, but with food, like you said, with the commercialization, once you go from like the farmer's market to, you know, a step up to the grocery store, there's just so much for someone as a new entrepreneur to consider in terms of, like you said, food safety, packaging,
Exactly.
all these crazy things. So it's really exciting to know that in addition to, you know, people like you doing consulting businesses, there's also these other places where you can just go and learn in terms of it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really exciting.
Yeah, and that program has seen a lot of people come through in the past year, a lot of interest there. So it's doing very well. And besides being an instructor for Food Venture program, I also help the people that have completed the program. So there are a lot of businesses that do the program. They're like, we learned so much. We feel confident in going forward. We're going to do it. And then there are other people that are like, okay, there is so much to do. I don't know where to begin. And I maybe want to focus on the business and the marketing, or I'm the face of the brand and that's what I want to do. But I don't want to deal with the food science or the regulatory or the legalities of having a food business. And that's where I come in with my consulting business, because I help those people make sure that they're able to do those things in the proper manner and following all the regulations from the CFIA.
It's a perfect match. You found that little niche just to put yourself. So that's good. Another thing that you had mentioned that I find really interesting, and I want to point out, is that you said that it was a woman-led leadership. And I think that's another important thing to point out, because I think that's a really important subject in terms of leadership and seeing more visibility in these roles, because I think that when we promote women, I do think that it kind of lifts everyone up. And I think that that's great. You've mentioned that earlier, that in the product development space, that women who are Latina and like people of color, it's not as noticeable. And I wanted to know more. You had mentioned that you're passionate about this subject. Could you tell me why you're passionate about this? And maybe we can go with the conversation from there.
I think it's really important to empower women, and also women that are possibly a visible minority, or just they're not represented in the same light as other people. Like, we don't have necessarily the same opportunities, or we're scared to put ourselves out there sometimes because of our background or because of the way we look. And I know that I didn't have a lot of mentors before that look like me. It's so much more common now. I've seen a lot of CEOs that are women and that also are visible minorities doing it. Just the combination of the two and representing that group of people, that we're here and we're visible. And Canada is just such a multicultural country, and we're already visibly very different. And it's important to have that kind of representation in leadership roles. So for Food Venture program, it's to me really amazing that the two women at the forefront are visible minorities, and they're women, and they're so empowered, and they're doing an amazing job, and they're so successful. And to be a part of that, and also be a woman in a leadership role before, when I was the director of operations at Nuts for Cheese, just giving other people hope and saying like, hey, we're out here, we're doing it. You can do it one day too. That's why I'm so passionate about it. I think it's important to highlight that, to say that it doesn't really matter what our background is or the fact that we're women, but we're capable of doing the exact same thing that everyone else is, and we're just as good at it. And so that's really my goal with that, is to empower other people that look like me and say, hey, I wasn't born in Canada. My parents came from El Salvador, and we came to Canada under a refugee status, but we had all the same opportunities and we did what we could with what we had. And both my sister and brother and we've done what we could with all these opportunities, and we're representing a portion of the population that exists. And we just want to empower them and say, hey, you can do it too. You have these opportunities, you have these tools. Don't let those things hold you back. Just keep going forward.
I'm so happy I'm able to share that with others, because it's so important. And I think the food space is, if anything, one of the best spaces that you could be doing it, because every culture has its association with foods as well. And to be able to see the people behind it as well. And in food allows you to share a story as well.
It's so true. Like, food is the one thing that unites people, and it's the one language that everybody can speak. And no matter what your culture or your background is, it brings people together, and you can just explain a lot about who you are through your food. And so having people that are from all different backgrounds representing that in the food industry, it is the perfect place to do it. And I think the way you said it was perfect, actually. It's the perfect industry to do that. It's you have so many opportunities to do it. And now is a really exciting time because COVID affected so many different businesses, but food and beverage, that's something that is going to continue to be around. It's a necessity for all people. They still need to go out and buy their food and get whatever's new in the market. So it's not something that's going away. And I think it's more opportunity for people to start their businesses, even amongst the pandemic. Like, it's still the right time, I would say.
Yeah, especially for the category like the grocery store. And I was talking to one of my lab mates this week, and we were talking about how we miss potlucks. And I miss potlucks because that was the time when everyone would come together and like bring a home cooked dish or something. And I was exposed to so many things that I've never heard of these dishes before. And I was like, wow, this is awesome. And like, it represented who they are at home.
That's so true. I feel the same way about potlucks. I had just recently, before the pandemic, started going to a vegan potluck, and I wasn't vegan before I started working at the vegan cheese factory, but I started eating a lot more plant-based afterwards. I would consider myself a flexitarian. I go weeks without having any meat or cheese, but I do go back and forth. And at the potlucks, I learned so much about how to cook and like what ingredients to use to make things taste good without having meat or dairy in it. And it's just a good space to like learn about things. You're like, oh, I guess it can use that kind of bean in this dressing, or, oh, look at that. You know, you just learn all these different techniques for cooking that don't necessarily rely on meat or dairy and still get good flavor.
I'm going to have to like hijack these potlucks because I want to learn more about. My dad's very much into, he's a meat eater, and I would love to incorporate some more vegan dishes, but I find it's difficult it's not like I can just put like a really good salad in front of him or something like that. So like if I could like trick them, so
exactly.
to say, so I need to hijack this potluck.
I think for sure it's that's the trickiest thing about doing vegan dishes, is trying to get people to eat it. But if it tastes good, like, it doesn't matter. People will just want to eat it because it tastes good. You don't even have to tell them it's vegan. And that's how you have to create your dishes. Just make it taste really good, and no one will complain or say anything about it.
Exactly. I need more practice at that, I'm not gonna lie. But with all these new products coming out, it's making things easier, because even the space like 10 years ago, like I remember you're mentioning about, you worked at Nuts for Cheese. When I was back in high school, vegan cheeses were definitely not prominent, or a lot of these alternative meats and all these things. You just could only really get like tofu sausages or, soybean. And I'm not saying that it's a lot easier to be vegan now than it was before.
100%. I think there was stuff out there before, it just didn't taste good, or they didn't try hard enough. They're just trying to say, okay, there's a segment of people out there, we have to have this product out there, they'll buy it. But now the stuff that's coming out tastes good. Like, it actually tastes good. Like the Beyond Meat burger and the sausages they make with the pea protein base, like that stuff is amazing. I use it all the time in my cooking, and I don't miss meat at all when I'm having a dish like that. It tastes so much better than some of the older things that were in the market before. They actually put a good foot forward and said, hey, we can make things that taste just as good as meat, and you don't have to feel like you're missing out.
Yeah. And that's what I'm excited for the future in terms of the food market, is because you have a lot of these people who are in these startups and they have these great ideas for vegan or vegetarian or alternatives and all those types of spaces. And they're coming from a place of, I'm just tired of eating some poor food. I'm just going to do it myself. And then other people can jump in. So I'm so excited for that space. And I bet you are too.
It's a huge space. It's growing every single day. I can't believe how much it's changed even since I started 4 years ago in the space. All the competitors that are popping up out of nowhere. It's actually a really good thing. It just forces people to be better and to make their product taste better. So it's an exciting time for plant-based foods for sure.
Totally. And going back into what we were speaking about earlier and with leadership and that, I thought this would be a good time to ask you, what advice would you give students and new graduates just starting out in the industry? What advice would you give them?
The biggest advice I would give to any graduate that wants to go into food science and do something specifically in the food industry is absorb everything you can in whatever role that you take. In product development, which is really nice, you get to see so many different aspects of the business. You're not just in a little bubble in a company, even if it's a large corporation. Because you are launching a product, you have to deal with sales, marketing, you have to deal with production. Sometimes you're just sitting in meetings that you might not even speak in, but just absorb everything that people are saying. You learn so much just from learning from other people and being around other people with different backgrounds and expertise. Sometimes just being around other people and absorbing their knowledge and experience gets you really far. And I've done that my entire career, and I've learned a tremendous amount from other people. And when you're a graduate and you haven't had that experience and you don't know what you bring to the table, sometimes just being there and listening can do a lot for you. So that's my biggest piece of advice, is just absorb where you can.
I think that's great advice, because you'll never know what ends up coming back and helping you. Even something for me, when I did an off summer working in a warehouse, it just kind of worked out because it was near my house. And I never realized that working in a warehouse would then help me later on when I was working at a food factory. So
Exactly, yeah.
I have to agree. And one of the things that I've been thinking a lot about now as well, you say absorb, but sometimes you kind of forget in the future some of the things you've learned. Do you have any ways that you try to remember what you've done, or how do you keep remembering what you've absorbed? Because when you're new, like everything, it might be too much information at once. So do you have any ideas on how to go forward with that idea?
Write things down. I always have a notebook with me. I have a sticky pad with me at all times with a pen, because I do have short-term memory. Like I absorb as much as I can, but I find that like I need to repeat things or go back and look at my notebook. So I write everything down. Everything. When I'm at work, I carry something with me and I literally write things down all the time. And then when I look back in my notebook, I remember, oh yeah, this is how you're supposed to do this, or this is how you get a UPC barcode, like a little, whatever it is. But absorbing requires like definitely going back and looking at what you did, and note taking is super important for that.
Okay. So that's definitely one of those skills that don't just throw note taking out the window after you leave school, even though you might want to.
Oh, you have to give yourself reminders, checklists, whatever helps you to do your thing. And then you learn from it for sure.
But with someone like you juggling so many things in consulting, because like you said, you don't just do help with one business. How do you stay organized?
I have this, I use Notion. So Notion is
Oh
a
my
program
gosh.
that I was just introduced to. Do you use it?
I do use it.
It's
I'm a Notion
amazing.
freak.
Yeah, it's amazing. I was like, where has this been my whole life?
Totally.
But I just started using it a couple months ago, or even just a month ago, actually. And I organize all my stuff in there. And it's basically like my brain in a website that has all my thoughts. And I can go back and look at things in an organized manner. That's my way of keeping myself organized with the different projects. But I know in the past, I've used project numbers. And I keep everything in file folders that is related to that particular client or project. I keep reminders in my calendar to make sure I remember to do certain things for deadlines. Product development is really project management, and it is a lot of keeping organized. And that's my tool go-to right now is Notion.
And I'm just going to get you to repeat that in terms of what Notion is because I cut you off because I was so excited to talk to someone else who uses Notion. So could you just say that a little bit more what it was?
I mean, I don't even really know how to describe Notion myself. Maybe you can help me define it, but Notion is a program that pretty much is a project management tool where you can organize things as like embedded web pages or links, but it basically takes all your thoughts and organizes everything into different projects or different companies. If I'm working with, I have different project numbers and I can identify them that way. And it just organizes all your thoughts. It's a programmer's dream because it is almost like a computer programming program, but for people who don't know how to do that, it's an easy tool to organize everything you're working on.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good way to summarize that. Notion is everything, and it can be anything that you want it to be, because the funny thing is I'm using it to organize for the podcast, for doing FoodGrads. I'm also using it for my school reading research papers. I put it in there. I put in my goals. You can put everything into Notion, and I really highly suggest people check it out. And I think it's free for students, if I'm not mistaken. So maybe if students listening, they might want to check that out.
For sure. It is free, and you can also tag people in it. It kind of takes all the good elements of like a Slack application, but project management at the same time. And if you are collaborating with people, you can have them tagged in certain spots so they can see what you want them to see for a project and what they need to work on. There's a lot of aspects about that program that you can use as project management. It's great.
Yeah, I know. And I could keep going on this podcast and just like keep talking about this with other people because I'm trying to get people in my lab to use it. But again, this podcast is for the food industry, so maybe I can get into my favorite softwares.
We're gonna promote Notion on this program.
I know. Well, they're always sponsoring people, but I don't think this will be the thing they'll sponsor. So that's why I'm going to jump back in. And I just wanted to ask you, why is the food industry a great place to work?
The food industry is so interesting. There's constant innovation, and coming from a product development background, that to me is super interesting. Just seeing what's coming out, what ideas people have on the horizon, what new ingredients you can use in your recipes, what types of packaging are coming out. It's a dynamic industry. It's a small industry is what I would say. Having been in the industry for over 10 years, you start to bump into the same people, and making connections becomes easier and easier as you get comfortable in your space. It's just exciting. The opportunities are endless, and the more people you know, the more well-versed you are to be successful in it. So just put yourself out there. And if you're ever at those food trade shows, I know a lot of them are online now, but it's a great way for even students to meet people and make connections that maybe later on in life you'll use. You don't even know. So I love the food space for that. It's interesting.
It totally is. And it's small, but then it doesn't seem like it's small. But I think that's what's exciting about it. And you are right. You bump into the same people, and it's just really strange how it happens. And that's why it's always good to have good relationships with everyone.
Exactly. For sure.
So I think that's a good place to end off the podcast. But before we go, I just wanted to ask, where can people find you?
So we have a website for True Leaves Consulting. It's called trueleavesconsulting.com. And then I'm also can be found at the Food Venture Program. So www.foodventureprogram.com. And the courses that are offered there, you'll see me as an instructor on there. I also have my email, innovationcardona@gmail.com, where I talk to people one-on-one with their particular businesses. So those would be the best ways to contact me. And of course, I have my LinkedIn with my contact information in there as well.
That's great. And I'll make sure to link everything in the show notes so people can easily find you. Thank you so much, Karen, for coming on the show. It's pretty awesome what you do. And I think if people are new to the business side with the food industry, or if they want to know more about consulting, I think that you are a great resource. And I'm so happy that I was able to share this with everyone.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. And yeah, it's a scary time for me just putting myself out there, but I think I have a lot to offer, and I hope people will take that, and I can get myself out there and my name out there as my own consultant. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
That was episode 17 of the FoodGrads Podcast. All the notes to this podcast can be found on the FoodGrads website by clicking the podcast tab on the homepage. There, you can find any notes to past or future episodes. If you enjoyed this episode, then consider leaving a review on wherever you get your podcasts. There's so many of them out there, and we would really appreciate it. Also, if you are enjoying the episodes or have an idea for a guest or an idea or a career path that you want to explore, just shoot me over an email at veronica@foodgrads.com. You can look at any of the FoodGrads social media platforms, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, we're on all of it, and if you send us a message, we'll get it. Anyways, that's it for this week's podcast. Thank you everyone so much for listening. I'll see you next week.